We know Georgia's opponent in its next game. College football quarterfinal, Georgia versus Notre Dame. Brent Rollins, Dayne Young from UGAsports.com. We're here to preview and scout the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. And if you like the content we do here on Film Don't Lie, part of a YouTube channel that has more than 50,000 subscribers, tops among any team, any media outlet that covers the Georgia Bulldogs. If you like that, subscribe and help that number keep on growing. Like the page, all that good stuff. And then support the sponsors that help make it free. Breda Pest Management. And then we have Oconee Gold Barbecue Sauce and ASW Distillery. So support those folks. Brent, we watched Notre Dame on Friday demolish Indiana. It was not particularly close. And we're not going to be able to show too much from that game that I think Georgia will see other than here are the players they have, because they weren't tested in that way. But overall, when you watched Notre Dame, Indiana, what was your takeaway?
Sadly, it was more about Indiana than it was Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame did exactly what they had to do, took care of, made plays early, and then Indiana just stopped trying almost. It was the most bizarre, unprepared team I've ever, because there's certain things that we're going to show, not necessarily in this offense video, but mainly in the defense and how Notre Dame plays defense. Indiana did not attack. They didn't prepare for. They just did what they do and kind of, But Notre Dame took it to them. Notre Dame also, I think you could tell after about, I don't know, a quarter and a half, it was like, okay, let's just not screw this up. Put this thing on cruise control. Get out of here healthy as much as we can and go from there.
The soccer term is park the bus, and that's what they did. They parked the bus.
It was clear.
Let's check out some stats here and introduce you to some Notre Dame players. If you've watched a lot of the Irish, this may feel repetitive and rudimentary. We're treating this as if maybe you haven't seen any of them. They play on a little strange network for college football if you're in the South watching this, but Riley Leonard is the quarterback. Duke transfer. He is mobile threat. You see 17 passing touchdowns, but if I scroll down over to the rushing touchdowns, there you go, 15 rushing touchdowns. So he is a red zone threat, and we'll show off some of that. Brent, 6 interceptions, and those were kind of aggregated into a couple of games. When I watch him, doesn't take a whole lot of chances, doesn't have special elite arm talent, but he can make the throws.
Yes, it can make throws, but very risk averse and very much and we'll show this when we look at the offense. It's one read. If it's there, throw it. If it's not, maybe get to the second read. Likely, I'm just kind of create and pull the ball down and run.
We will discuss the common comparison, which is for Georgia fans what maybe they saw in Haynes King. I don't see a lot of that, but we'll get to that point. And I'll be curious your thoughts there. Running the ball, Jeremiah Love is one of the best skill players in the nation. And with 16 touchdowns, you saw the 98-yard run that broke the game open early against Indiana. Brent, this is a guy that I think going into next season is probably in preliminary Heisman conversations.
At least a little bit, yeah. I definitely think that. And I thought you were going more draft route, but yeah, the Heisman might be there because in terms of what's coming back, it's not like it's a plethora of playmakers and big time guys.
Also need to mention Jadarian Price, 100 carries on the season. That's just going to be the next guy in line. Maybe you get a little Aeneas Williams. Most likely it's going to be the Love and Leonard show running the ball. Receiving for them, we have Bo Collins. If you watched the game against Indiana, you saw a lot of Jordan Faison. He only has 23 receptions on the year, but he had a big game against Indiana. So overall, not anyone receiving-wise that you look at and say that's going to be a featured portion of the offense.
It's not their strength, those guys make plays when they have to and when they need to and when they're there. But it's not like we're going to come on here and talk about, say, like Jeremiah Smith and how you have to account for him on every single play. That's not their receiving room.
Mitchell Evans at tight end is one of the favorite targets, but you see not for a whole lot of yards. This is going to be easy check downs. They do this thing that we're going to show here in a second where when Riley Leonard is kind of the pocket collapsing, he tends to have a little dump off to a running back or a tight end that's about 3 yards in front of him.
Yeah. We'll show you that a lot against Indiana too.
Yeah. Saw a lot of that there. So that's kind of the introduction to the Notre Dame roster. We could show the box score against Indiana. You can go look at it. It's really the Love with the 98-yard run. Other than that, Brent, the yards per carry, not a whole lot.
Less than 3. It's like I wrote it down. It's like 31 for 101 without the 98-yard run.
Which I get it. People can cite that stat, but guess what? The 98-yard run happened, and it dictated the rest of the game.
Yeah, and it's like we said a few minutes ago. Like you could just tell they put the offense on cruise control. Don't make mistakes. Don't take shots or don't take chances. Let's just get out of here as healthy as we can.
Let's get into the video here, and I'll point out this is a 12 plays that we're showing, and 2 of them are a special teams thing that can keep the offense on the field. This is not a comprehensive look at everything that Notre Dame does. And I think you may be going under the hood a little bit for UGAsports.com members of why the running game works like it does. And so people in the dog vent can check that out. We're trying to introduce you to the basic concepts of what Notre Dame is, what Notre Dame does. And to me, Brent, this is a lot of Notre Dame's going to try to limit Georgia's possessions. And in that way, the game plan is going to feel a little bit like Georgia Tech, where half a quarter may go by and Notre Dame just kind of like mold down the field a little bit.
Yep, and it's one where, in terms of just the game itself, it might almost feel like this because both teams are going to want to run the ball. I think, especially given the fact that you're going to likely see Gunnar Stockton in the QB, so the limited possessions might be very much a thing.
So let's start here. This is one of the touchdown plays early against Indiana. So the 98-yard touchdown run's already happened in the red zone. Toss over the top. Tight end. Oh, we lost Brent. There we go. You popped out of the video. I had to bring you back on the screen.
Sorry. What's interesting in terms of their offense is in terms of their rushing success, you would think that they would be a heavy play-action shot team. They're not really. It's not a big part of their game. It's only about 19% of his dropbacks. I mean, almost 20%. Now, I will say they do it a lot of times close to the goal line because of how much you're putting the emphasis on the run game, especially with the QB. Because almost 20%, it's like 7 or 8 of like 35 completions off of play action are for touchdowns. So they're trying to score and hit either big shots or goal line type stuff with the play action. And because of the attention that 13, 24, and 4 command, especially in the red zone, it can be a weapon for them. You know, when they have 9 that's a 6'7" tight end, 88, 6'5", bigger targets.
The other thing is when you have a quarterback that is a red zone threat in terms of touchdown runs and then also can make the passes and get balls over the top like this, it erases errors. So watch this block attempt here and how this should be blown up, but the timing of the play is such that he can toss this out of the back of the end zone if he doesn't like. Boom. One thing about Riley Leonard to me, Brent, he's fine to stay in a pocket that's collapsing. He's a physical football player. He's an athlete overall. They talk about how good of a basketball player he was. I don't think you're going to spook this guy. He may not make all the throws and have all the angles, but he's a gamer. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and he's tough to sack. And I'm going to kind of get into some of those numbers here in a little bit, and mainly because of how he navigates the pocket with that.
All right, next up. So this is a 14-3, 2nd and 4 here.
This is what I'm talking about in terms of first read, not there. Any sort of pressure, I'm going to move and create. Because this is not really – it's not really a pocket he had to leave. And if if this is Carson Beck for Notre Dame, it's boom, look, no, and then he comes right back to the dig or the in-breaking route to the right. But it's not his game. So it's one, look, no, okay. And then I'm going to move the pocket and make plays with my legs and sort of keep things moving. And like, especially at this point in the game, by the way, and I think it's the next play, but underrated thing in this game, Indiana's got a lot of pressure. They pressured him almost 50% of his dropbacks in this game. They had 29 total pressures as a team. And they won a lot of one-on-one battles against Notre Dame's offensive line.
The frustrating thing for defenses here is that this was a first down and kind of a broken play, something that Notre Dame didn't necessarily do anything great. But if you don't get this guy on the ground and force his angles, he can make it where these drives extend longer than you want them to. And in that way, I understand some of the Hanks-Kings comparisons because you thought you had him down so many times and he wasn't.
Tough to tackle. Very tough to tackle. By the way, Indiana missed 22 tackles in the game. 22.
Yeah.
It was not good.
2nd and 1, Notre Dame cruising at this point.
And
Almost
like I
halfway
said,
through.
this is when they wanted to, they got pressure. The left tackle, I think 6 for Kamara for Indiana, 54 at left tackle gave up. I think it was 7 or 5 pressures in the game. Had a pass block grade, PFF pass block grade in the 20s, I think. And by the way, on the season, his pass block grade is right around 50. So it's not like it's something where Notre Dame knows, hey, I can just drop back and play a drop back game. They kind of know some of the limitations, younger offensive line, and they've gotten better over the year. But it's still one where Indiana, when they wanted to, they got pressure. And he's just really tough to sack. I think his pressure to sack rate is right around 12%, which is one of the top 15 in the country. So rarely when he is pressured, does he actually get sacked.
You talked earlier about him being risk averse too. These little dump off passes to a tight end on a drag, or sometimes it's a running back getting right in front of the line of scrimmage. He has no problem putting these near the calf, near the shoe tops, and it's not going to be an interception if this ball is low. And my guy can get it, and it's going to be a first down, and we live another day. They did that multiple times against Indiana.
Yeah, very low in terms of turnover-worthy plays on the season for him.
All right, so now let's get to some other games. And we had a chat, and you said, look, we need to show off some more of this UFC game because that's where you saw more of the offense. It got out of hand so quickly against Indiana. They kind of got very basic very quick.
Yes, and this is one where he had to make plays because USC was actually scoring. So they had to go and consistently sort of keep up in a way. And the guy that catches this pass here, number 9, doesn't catch many. I think maybe 10, 11. I forget exact number in terms of catches, but 6'7" target in the red zone. And look where he puts this ball, like right where it needs to be. He actually had more big-time throws in this game against USC than he had in any other game. Now, granted, USC wasn't the greatest defense in the world. And by the way, Notre Dame hasn't faced a lot of great defenses, by the way, especially pass defense. They just haven't faced a lot of the upper echelon pass defenses in the country. And they didn't need to a lot of times and throw the ball. But in this game they did, and he made throws.
Hey, what was your take on comparing this to Indiana? In Indiana, Notre Dame almost lived in the pistol and then sometimes audibled out into more of a shotgun style set. In this game, when a shootout, it wasn't quite as much pistol.
A lot more in this game. Louisville, the ones I watched were USC, Louisville, Georgia Tech, and then the Indiana game, obviously. But there was a lot more 2x2 in this game, and they do it to get rid of the ball quick. They do it to give him space, I think, as much as anything. Yeah. And I think they're going to do that to Georgia, where, hey, if you want to rush and get out of your rush lanes, we trust our guy to find the hole and get through and make plays as a scrambler. If you want to create and then or give him space to scramble.
So we saw an accurate touchdown pass there.
This guy's a threat no matter when he touches the ball.
This is Jeremiah Love.
60 missed tackles forced in the run game. He's almost he was not, his average depth of target was negative. So everything that for the most part that he caught was behind the line of scrimmage. There's a few that were that on average it was behind the line of scrimmage, but he averaged 9 yards a catch. So everything he's getting is after the catch, and he's just explosive, very tough to tackle. And if you give him a window, he's housing it, as we saw against Indiana.
If there's reason to be confident as a Georgia fan with this, I think it's that there's not a running back that has really hit up Georgia hard this year. I mean, Georgia has done – Texas is a good running team, and Georgia shut them down twice. Right. We know Sampson at Tennessee had a good game against Georgia, but wasn't his best of the year by any means.
No, it was good, but it wasn't – he didn't dominate the game. He didn't control the game. Georgia, for the most part, controlled the game there. What's obviously hurt them is the running quarterback in those systems, but Notre Dame's system is not that. Notre Dame's system is not a lot of read game. It's more power and QB power and things like that. So the thing for me with Georgia, I think you're going to see them play a ton of zone unless they really just want to bring the pressure. and get in his face and bring more than – because you can also play man against this team and not necessarily worry about getting beat one-on-one. But it's the dilemma of, hey, if I blitz and play man and the QB somehow escapes,
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see Georgia more a lot of the odd mirror type stuff that we talked about with Texas, where it's a 3-man rush, man under with 1 or 2 spies, some zone safeties. So all these, the checkdowns to 4, the checkdowns to 24, the other back. That's how you limit their explosive plays.
So whereas Texas was trying to pick on Harris early on, Georgia's number 2 corner, maybe Notre Dame's not as primed to do that, both with wide receiver skill weapons, but then also just what Leonard wants to do.
Though I will say, like against Indiana, when Indiana played off coverage, they went and took the 7-yard out or 7-yard hitch multiple times when you just gave it to them consistently. No, when you didn't offer any resistance. And I think you're going to see Georgia at least play some level of press. And if they are playing zone, they're going to run from that. But so as to not give them easy yards.
This is in the middle of the slugfest. A lot of points here with USC and Notre Dame. And that's I wanted to include this play, not because of whatever hurdle that was at the end. Open field top end speed for this guy is strong. He's a fast football player. No, he's not going to be Milroe out there. But
no,
you give him open space and he can take advantage of it.
And if you look at his rushing on the season, he had 800 yards. About 325 of those were on scrambles. Now, so the majority were on design runs. But if you look at the actual totals in the games in which he did that, most of those yards were against Purdue and Miami of Ohio on design runs. If you look at any sort of big-time game that they played, his rushing is more so on scrambles than it is on design runs. And this is why, to me, they actually do play run a lot of 2x2 and spread type formations, because if you rush forward, I think they're confident that he's just going to find a way to maneuver it and go scramble and turn anything potentially negative into a positive play.
Because of what they do in that backfield, it's going to put a lot of pressure on Georgia's inside linebackers of, who's spying, who's on Riley Leonard, who can stop him, who can make an open field tackle. Do you see, I'm not saying offensive scheme because it's really not very similar, but do you see any similarities to that and maybe some of what Jackson Dart and Lane Kiffin were doing with Ole Miss? Like, I'd have to think that one of the things that Marcus Freeman and company will do is look at that Ole Miss tape and say, what did Ole Miss do that Georgia had trouble with?
A little bit, but theirs was more misdirection, and Notre Dame's not necessarily a misdirection offense.
Yeah.
That's like, they're not a true play action 50% of the time misdirection offense like Ole Miss. And even like Georgia Tech is. It's just not what they've done a lot of. Now, by the way, did they have the time to prepare? Can they use some of that? Of course they can.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing for me in this entire game is going to be Georgia's ability to tackle, because Love and Price and then Leonard as well, all three would be leading Georgia in terms of missed tackles forced on similar attempts. Indiana missed 22 tackles. Like, if you tackle these guys and limit the explosives, force them into defined passing situations, I think Georgia can dominate defensively. But if you don't do that, then they control the pace, they control the game, and then you got yourself a fight.
I mean, this pass here, just to the front corner pylon.
Like I said, he can make throws. Does he make those throws consistently? Not necessarily all the time, but he can make and beat you in the throw game if you let him. Like, if you look at on the season, 15 big-time throws, but only 7 turnover-worthy plays. It's not something where they consistently, his average depth of target, I think, was right around 7.5 yards. So they don't consistently push the ball down the field. Maybe only, I think it was like 10% of his throws were over 20 yards.
Yeah.
But can make the throws. And if you look at, I think it's 8 of 13, their games, he's had a PFF passing grade over 70. So very solid, very above average. I can't remember. This one was right around 80 maybe. His best games were Florida State was one of his best games, I think, passing grade wise. Now, if you want to say, if those who are Georgia fans say, well, who have they played? Who are they going to – against Texas A&M, he had a 58.7 passing grade, a couple turnover-worthy plays. So you just You never know. But in terms of ability and actual, can he make the throws and hurt you if you don't play it well? Yes.
And he even wrote that the Northern Illinois loss, he was awful. Like, not
Yeah.
good in that game at all, and was the reason that they lost that game.
Entirety of the team was bad in that game, I think.
Correct. Now, the reason that we show these two plays together is not to tell you that he's a world beater and best quarterback in the country. He's not that. But he has the capability to beat you in the open field running, and he can make throws like this. So we're trying to show you what is Georgia looking at and saying you have to be aware of this guy's skill set in this area, because I just don't think, Brent, that there are too many quarterbacks in the country that have the ability to do all of these things. Now, consistency, we're talking a different deal, but the capability of this guy is, to me, of a guy that could go win a national championship as a quarterback. I think he has that ability. Now, consistency, especially against the top end teams, we haven't seen that this year because I haven't played them.
And you see good pass pro here. Like if you look at Notre Dame's team pass block grades against Louisville, A&M, and Indiana, which is what I would consider their three best opponents. Sub 60 pass block grade, which is sort of average. Everything was in the 50s. So your ability to get to him and win one-on-ones against their offensive line is there.
All right, here's a play from Navy, because we just want to show off number 4 a little bit in the open field.
And yes, it's Navy, but like everybody still shows the highlight of Randy Moss dunking on Army and running and jumping over people against Army that one year. Like he's got top end speed. Now the breakaway component of this, 55% of his yards were on breakaway runs, over 15-yard runs. You have to limit explosive plays. And by the way, Price, the 24, 64% of his yards, big on breakaway runs, like 15-plus yard runs. You have to limit their explosive plays in the running game. By those two numbers, both top 10 in the Power 5. Like so, yes. By the way, other than the 98-yarder, did Indiana do that? Yes, they did. But they still gave up a 98-yarder that changed the game and the sort of vibe of the game.
And some of it, from what I saw, and you'll dive into more of this in the dog van, I'm sure, just the technique that you see, interior offensive lines, it starts with a double, break away, and then 50 here, get to the next level, boom, done. Like by the time this guy realizes that 4 has the ball, he's by him.
Yep.
And that was the 98-yard run that set the pace against Indiana. It was one bad fit from Indiana, and then he sees the hole, and he's gone.
And then one bad angle from your safety, gone.
Yeah.
Like that combo, and he was gone. You have to limit the explosives. But from a scheme standpoint, what they do with Leonard in the QB power game, especially in short yardage, that's to me something that Georgia's got to be able to defend, because it's just hard. They pick up extra blockers to the nth degree when they use him in the run game. So, and then also they can throw it to 4, and he can go make plays out of the backfield.
This was against Army, and yeah, I get what Army is. Notre Dame was dominant in this game. This was as good of a game as I saw them play all year. Again,
and it's a talent. There's a defined talent discrepancy, but still, you should dominate those opponents, and that's what they did. I think in terms of margin of victory, they had one of the higher ones in the country this year. And if you give this guy a crease, and yes, it is Army, he's still gone. He's still fast. You still got to catch him. You still got to tackle him.
I like that he doesn't dance around. I like that he makes his cut and he stays north and south. Again, I think it's one of the more prolific runners in the country. Overall, Notre Dame's not an explosive offense. You mentioned the word explosives a moment ago. When they get explosives, it's usually this guy, and it's this way.
Yep. Him and Price in the running game, and a few from Leonard here and there, but mainly those two guys. It's like it's talking about the run game, and obviously the run game is the central focus of theirs. Later in the week, after the holiday, that's going to be something that I'll be looking at for those that want to subscribe to UGAsports.com and find some sort of deal if we got one going running or 30 days free. There's something like that. Check that later in the week, and we'll look at a lot more of what they do in the run game. But this part was fun for me, and it's consistent. They consistently find ways to do unique things on special teams.
So this is against USC. A little fake punt. Throwback.
You know what it made me think of, by the way, watching it? Was Rudy. Made me think of the guy, the tailback that threw the ball to the guy when he said, "Hey, we need to get the defense back on the field so Rudy can get on the field." Like that, this guy making that throw, like put it on the money.
Yeah.
There we go, right at him. And these plays are just fun. And 7-7 on the road, by the way, make that call where they are on the field on their own 25. Like that takes some bit of stones from Marcus Freeman to make that call.
Couple things just of note personnel-wise, because you're going to hear a lot about how Georgia's breaking in a new quarterback, and Riley Leonard is one of the more seasoned and experienced quarterbacks in college football, all of that. When you get into special teams, Brett Thorson's not playing for Georgia, and Georgia's breaking in a new punter. All at the same time, while we're seeing some creative fake punts, which this is pretty consistent, like Marcus Freeman taking chances on special teams. They're very good and consistent and willing to try these things. We'll show another in just a moment. But also kicker returning for Notre Dame after being injured much of the year. South Carolina transfer made kicks against Indiana. I would say that the stability on special teams at Notre Dame that's a plus in their box as compared to Georgia.
Yeah. Georgia's also had time to practice.
Sure. And we'll see what the punting situation looks like. You just know it's not going to be Thorson. And it may be great. It may be fun. And if Georgia does all the other things right, maybe you don't even have to punt.
That would be ideal for them. That's for sure.
Here's the other one. This one against Georgia
This
Tech.
one was interesting because it was so slow developing. But ended up being a big play, again, on their own side of the field. Finding ways to just be different, be unique. Like this is like what Georgia did with Arian, except then Arian would be tossing it back to somebody else. So yeah, like that. What was it? A reverse kickoff that they did against Indiana.
Yeah,
that got them an explosive in the kick return game. So like this is something that Georgia's obviously going to be paying a lot of attention to, punt coverage, because even in the punt return game, like you said, with the new punter, I mean, how many times has Georgia actually had to cover punts in the last few years with Thorson? Not many. So, that's something I think that you would bet that they've worked a lot on over the break and the time. So it's special teams are going to matter in a big way in this game. That's for sure.
So I'm higher on Notre Dame as a whole than I think most people that I've seen that cover Georgia that are based in the South. I think this roster is more talented than maybe the country's giving it credit for. Maybe I'm looking also at college football not having a solo dominant team this year and seeing Notre Dame have a piece of the pie. There's also the factor that a lot of people say, man, this is Notre Dame. I've seen them in big spots too often. They're going to lose this game. They can never compete with the big boys on this spot. And the only thing I have to say about that is it's college football, and these rosters turn over every year or two. So these guys,
Georgia's playing another quarterback.
Yeah,
and yes, you saw it in the second half against Texas, but you also saw him almost give the game away in a colossally bad interception.
Yeah,
and as we're going to show in the defensive video here in a little bit, Notre Dame's going to play a lot of man, and Notre Dame's going to pressure you. And they're going to find ways to bring pressure. And Gunnar Stockton, if he's going to have to take care of the football, because if you don't take care of the football and you allow them in any way to run the football, you're in trouble. So, but do I think those things are going to happen? Not necessarily.
Yeah, you and I are viewing this game, I think, pretty differently, which is interesting. Because I'd say we've been on the same page for the most part this year of what Georgia's been facing. I also think Marcus Freeman, and I go back to the Cincinnati Peach Bowl, where that roster was not nearly as talented as what Georgia's was. And Georgia is a more talented program now than it was back then. But that Cincinnati team competed. And it helps when you have Sauce Gardner, I guess. Makes every team better. And technically, Desmond Ridder was an NFL quarterback, but
yes, we
can talk about that.
They had NFL guys, but yes, it was a good game that day.
Yeah, it was a good game.
And by the way, I think this will be a good game. I do. I think it's much better than we saw this past weekend. That's for sure.
I mean, Vegas agrees. Early lines were that Notre Dame would be favored a little bit. I think a lot of money went to Georgia, and then now Georgia. But it's going to be in small margins. Vegas doesn't see this being a blowout either way. Not like
borderline a pick 'em, basically.
Yeah, not like Texas, Arizona State.
No.
Or Penn State, Boise State.
No.
Make sure you support Breda Pest Management, the official pest control of the Georgia Bulldogs. They protect Sanford Stadium, which is now not going to be used until G-Day. although it is one of
That's
the
right.
coolest things of really all of football is that you can go look at Sanford Stadium anytime and get all those good vibes. You don't get that around colleges with their stadiums most of the time. Breda Pest Management protects Sanford Stadium. You can protect your home as well at bredapest.com. Brent, you brought me the Georgia Sweet Peach from Oconee Gold Barbecue Sauce.
I haven't tried it yet, so what'd you think?
I haven't had it yet either. I thought you would. All right. And I'm traveling for a week
taking
for
it with
Christmas.
me.
Okay,
Yeah,
you
I'm
are?
taking it with me. Yeah, so we're gonna get that tried.
Is that
Get some-
West
get some
Virginia?
report
Is
on
that
it.
where you're headed?
Yes.
Oh, you're
gonna
bringing
get
the
that.
Georgia Sweet Peach up to West Virginia.
Yeah, we're gonna get that tried and taken care of.
It's sitting on my counter right now. I didn't even put it in the cabinet because I'm like, next time, like, yeah. We're the awkward spot, Brent, where like we don't want to buy a ton of groceries because we're going to be gone for a week for holidays, and so that's one reason I haven't gotten to it yet. But in the new year, Georgia Sweet Peach will be part of what I have going on. Go to OconeeGoldBarbecueSauce.com and you can try it for yourself. I think you should get the whole kit. It's probably a little late for a Christmas gift at this point,
I'll say,
but
yeah, but they do have a holiday pack if you still wanted to get it, and maybe
there you go.
for just because.
And if you want to bring in the new year right, ASW Distillery can help you do that. If you buy the Hunker Bourbon or the Hunker Vodka from ASW Distillery, and you can find out where that is with a map on their website. Anytime you buy those, portions of the proceeds go to Georgia's Classic City Collective, which helps in Georgia's recruiting efforts. So if you want to help Georgia, one easy way to do it is to switch from that vodka that that you've been drinking for a while, starting with the letter T, that also supports the university that begins with the T, Texas Longhorns. You make that switch, you help Georgia out. ASW Distillery. Also, the Fiddler Bourbon is fantastic, so I recommend it as well. That's Notre Dame's offense, Brent. I don't think it's going to be anything to be feared as a whole, but look, this is totally a game, and we'll bring up another video for our live audience here in a moment to look at Notre Dame's defense. This may be one of those, in this situation with Gunnar Stockton coming in, first to 20 wins kind of thing.
I have that. I get that feeling as well. I mean, granted, obviously, most of the time that's the case, especially in today's college football, or at least this year in college football. But even more so in this game when you know it's going to be a defensive. I think both teams' defenses are going to actually thrive.
Bank your sleep over the next week because that is an 8:45 Eastern time kick.
I saw that.
Which they usually get pushed back a little bit because of.
Oh yeah, that thing's not kicking until like 9:15 probably.
So
a little after 9.
Yeah, that's on New Year's Day. We'll be well into the second day of the new year, I think, when that thing gets wrapped. Unless this is like such a running affair that clock stays moving the entire time, and
that is a possibility.
They have to do things to fit in commercials. We'll see. Thanks for watching, everybody, and supporting Film Don't Lie from UGAsports.com. If you're watching live, just refresh our YouTube page in about 2 minutes, and you'll see us talk about Notre Dame's defense and what Gunnar Stockton and company will need to do to attack that.